My mom's an artist, and she's always said it, there's no right or wrong way to do art, there's just different techniques and mediums.
Hi, welcome to the latest edition of The Current, Touro University California's alumni podcast. I'm Glenn Faison, the Alumni Engagement Director here at the university. We are in the Social Justice Resource Center located at the library. Our guest today is Lisa Marie Smith. She's a two-time graduate of the Graduate School of Education, receiving 2 master's degrees, one in 2016 and one in 2019. You're a special education specialist with the St. Helena Unified School District. Sorry about that pause there. You're finishing your 15th year there, is that correct?
Correct.
Awesome. Fun fact about Lisa Marie, 2 master's degrees at Touro. That's wonderful. You had a master's degree before you even came here, correct?
Yes, I did.
That's amazing. So you've been a teacher in the classroom for 15 years, but you also had a couple of years as a special education instructional assistant over in Napa back in the mid-'80s. Mm-hmm. And then in the mid to late 2000s, you had 3 years as a special education teacher up in Washington State, correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us today, Lisa Marie.
Thank you for having me, sir.
So tell us a little bit about the path that led you to be an educator. I know you had the time as an instructional assistant in Napa for a couple of years, and then there was a gap in time, and then you had time in the classroom in Washington State, and then another gap in time, and then St. Helena.
Yes. So previously I had a degree as a medical laboratory technician and phlebotomist, and moved to Washington State with my first husband. And my son was in school and struggled with reading and writing, so I became that parent that was navigating the special education world. Along with my personal journey being in special education, I grew up hard of hearing, wearing bilateral hearing aids, and experiencing the world of special education very much segregated from my typical peers at that time, and realized that I wanted to get back into the education world. So then I shifted. I actually originally was going back to school to go into forensic science, and then switched to education.
All right. And so when you made that switch, at some point you decided one master's in special education wasn't enough, mm-hmm. that you wanted to get some more education on top of that. So kind of a twofold question here. Why did you feel like you needed to get not just one other master's degree in education, but 2 master's degrees in education, and why Touro University, California?
So while I was teaching in the high school setting, I worked with students with moderate to extensive support needs, grades 9 through 12, and I was also helping to develop the post-secondary transition program with the high school that I was currently on my teaching assignment with, and got a publication through the email and some flyers that was sent to our staff lounge promoting the educational leadership program that was here at Touro University. So I had an amazing interview with Dr. Luis Santiago, who encouraged me that I was a good candidate for the program. So that's how I started that journey here in Touro, and obtained that with a bunch of cohort fellow educators in the Napa County area, and graduated in 2016. I think you had already mentioned that. And then a couple years later, we saw another advertisement to be a then Napa Learns, but now Napa Education Foundation fellow, and was able to get tuition assistance to come back. And at that time I worked with Dr. Redman. Okay. And joining that program, and then I graduated in 2019. Our graduation was a little postponed due to the COVID
yes.
at that time.
Wow. So how do you feel that your time at Touro enhanced your, what you do in the classroom with the kids?
Having been a previous graduate of a private university up in Washington State, found that my experience here at Touro was very much different than maybe what other students might typically feel that they get in a state institution of higher education. But the amazing staff that was here, along with the professors, but also your graduate school of education administrators, your dean, and et cetera, really set me up, I think, for the foundational skills that I needed to bring into the classroom, especially the innovative learning degree, because I had finished that in 2019. So I was already implementing those strategies within my classroom during the coursework. So while I work with students with moderate to significant special needs, the extensive support needs, my students actually were set up quite successfully to be able to implement that with the remote learning. So that was kind of a blessing in itself, because my students were already doing that in the classroom, because I was bringing what I was learning from the innovative learning program, which was a hybrid setup, into my classroom prior to us going to remote learning.
Okay, and what types of innovations are you talking about specifically?
So in particular at that time, we were using Google Classroom to be able to do the live part, but also giving me the skills that I needed to be able to show, doing the share screen, etc., and then also setting up on Google Classroom to be able to give them the lessons and etc. to do in interim when I was not actually live. So that definitely set me up, because I was relatively new to the Zoom experience.
Okay.
Touro University actually introduced me that. I have never heard of Zoom before that. And so I was already set up to be able to do that successfully, while other educators probably struggled with that component and that piece. And I was also able to make it innovative and giving them strategies like interactive activities where they could actually participate live, and it wasn't just a instructor and they were listening and just sitting there. They were actually being able to engage with the lessons and the activities that I was doing.
Oh, it's wonderful. My wife's a teacher. I've mentioned that on the podcast before, and I've been talking to GSOE alum, and that was a trying time for the kids. It was a trying time for the teachers as well.
Yes, definitely.
Tell us about your time in the classroom. You've been in the classroom for 15 years now, not counting your time in Washington.
So my classroom is, I call it kind of an outside the box type of classroom, because I quickly realized in my own academic journey, I did not learn the way that typical peers do. Being hard of hearing up until my 30s and then profoundly deaf, I had to approach education and obtaining that instructional piece in a different format. So my students that I work with, we are very innovative and inclusive in our classroom. So if I can't provide an inclusive environment outside of my classroom, I bring students into my classroom. So for an example, right now I'm teaching an elective class for American Sign Language for 8th grade students. So they come into my classroom, so it's an inclusive environment for my students with moderate to extensive support needs within my classroom. And I've been teaching what we would refer to as special day class for the last 15 years.
Okay.
Even in Washington, they didn't refer to the, in different states they have different terminology we use. So, and I love the arts and sciences, so I bring a lot of that into the classroom, which is very helpful because my students are very hands-on, kinetic learners, and I'm able to do that in the classroom as well as do it in kind of a push-in environment where they're in a general ed setting, but I'm in there supporting them kind of as a co-teacher approach.
Okay. Now you mentioned earlier your cohort. When you were going through your master's programs, you would have had 2 cohorts. Do you find that you're still in contact with some of those folks? Do you guys still connect and kind of like, hey, what are you working on now?
I do have still ongoing kind of collaborative, besides, the social media and being connected through them, whether it's on Facebook, et cetera, we still, are friends on that way. But I do have several, whether it's cohorts before me or just after me or join mine in the Innovative Learning Program. And because I'm involved with the Napa Valley Education Foundation, and I'm one of the presenters that tend to present for the summit, so I just did one recently. And several of those that were in the innovative learning during the time that I was in there, we collaborate pretty intensively when we do those innovative learning presentations.
Okay, so I was going to get to that in a little bit, but since you mentioned it, you did present at the most recent Napa Valley Learning Innovation Summit. Touro University California's Graduate School of Education was one of the co-sponsors of the event. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that, about your role, why you're involved in it, and what the takeaways are?
So my role in the past, professional development presentations that we have done, obviously since 2020 we've had to do those on a virtual platform. We've done a couple in person since then. My role with that was to provide a presentation on how we can use artificial intelligence in the roles of providing innovative and inclusive education for students with significant special needs. So my presentation was titled Harnessing AI for Special Education to Provide an Inclusive Environment. So I gave an example of taking a middle school 6th grade social studies lesson and asking ChatGPT specifically how to generate a reading passage that's for 6th grade level, and then give me 10 questions. Now, it's not entirely accurate, so I do have to do my fact finding and actually check to make sure that the content that I receive is actually accurate. And luckily, I have a minor in social studies, so I'm able to do that. And then I asked it to generate that same reading passage and make it for a student that reads comprehensively at a 1st grade level but can decode at a 2nd grade level, and just give me very simplistic questions like maybe matching or multiple choice versus short or extended responses. To make sure that I'm reaching the students that are higher achieving, I asked her to now generate that same reading passage on the American Revolution, is what the title was, for a student that's in 6th grade but potentially can decode and comprehend at, say, a 9th grade level.
Okay.
And expand to 20 questions, multiple formats, and then give me a writing prompt because they're going to have to do an essay. And that allows for a teacher in a general education setting to meet the needs of the lowest students in the class, but also make it very engaging and intellectually challenging for your higher level students. So they're all reading about the same thing and they can all share and collaborate with each other, but you're meeting the actual instructional needs of the students.
Wow. Is that rolled out through the entire school district, or?
No, it's right now it's not really widely acceptable to use artificial intelligence because I think it's relatively new.
Okay.
And people don't realize that it actually can be a tool. It's not meant to replace teachers. It just adds to and helps them, especially if you're trying to meet the needs of students. Like I had mentioned in our middle school section, we do have students that can read at a 1st or 2nd grade level, but they're enrolled in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. And then we have some students that are a little bit higher achieving and students that are at grade level. So it allows a teacher that's in a general education setting that does not have to rely on a special education teacher to modify that for all those core content areas and be able to meet the needs of the students in about 60 seconds or less.
Okay. I think I'm following that. That sounds interesting. So, been a teacher for a long time now. You're also an entrepreneur.
Yes, I am.
You formed a couple of companies in recent years.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us about those companies, what the thinking was behind the companies, and what you're doing with them now?
So my husband is an artist, a retired general contractor, and built homes for about 30 years in the Northern California area. And I'm more of a crafter. My mom's an artist and my husband's an artist. So we started doing art shows prior to COVID, farmers markets, those kind of things. And it was a little tasking because, we have to set up the booths, just spending all day and selling your handcrafted items or your art pieces and then closing it down. So we realized that we could come up with a little bit of vacation money to set up aside. And so in 2020, we set up 22 shows for the entire year. We only got to do 2. The other 20 were canceled for obvious reasons. So we ended up staying home during remote learning. Well, I'm a very busy person. I'm a morning person. I have to stay busy. But however, remote learning was only for X number of hours a day, et cetera. So we started making facial masks for the COVID at the time. And as a deaf individual, I found it very challenging to find ones that were clear view. So we had some friends and family that had significant others or family members that really need to wear face masks. So they reached out to me because they know I can sew. So I started that journey, and 8 months later, we were able to pay off our house.
Wow.
So when we got back into the world of everything being opened up and people being allowed to travel, we decided to go back and do the arts and crafts shows. But we were only able to tap into farmers markets because those were the only ones that were open because they were considered essential. Again, it was a little bit tasking to have 2 booths. We were always the first ones there and the last ones to leave. We found a space. We were doing Calistoga Farmers Market, and we found a space right on the main street. The space had been closed for a number of years. So we decided to open up a brick and mortar art gallery and gift shop, and been doing that since May. This is our 3rd year.
Great.
Coming up on our 4th year, actually. And so we've been doing that for a while, and then through the arts and crafts, we realized that there's not really any arts and craft workshops for individuals with special needs, elderly, veterans, or those with debilitating injuries or illnesses. So we started doing arts and crafts shows, and then promoting our creative inspiration, a special kind of art, workshops and et cetera, and housing those in our brick and mortar place in Calistoga. And so that's been absolutely an amazing opportunity to do that at no cost to the participants that are involved. We do take in donations, and randomly we'll do some fundraising, et cetera. So that's how we started that. So we actually have 2 e-commerce businesses. We just opened up an online website doing what's called print on demand. So we take all of my husband's work, and it can be printed on anything from a mug to a sticker, et cetera. I was doing those in-house myself and do have the equipment doing it, but as you imagine, I'm quite busy and I'm in the middle of doing my dissertation, so therefore we're having to rely on other sources to do that.
Great. So you're telling us about your brick and mortar building and the special programming that you have there. Do you want to tell us what these businesses are called?
So our art gallery in Calistoga, it's right on the main street, is called Napa Valley Art on the Vine. It's an art gallery and gift shop, and we have everything from stickers on up to my husband's original art pieces, and then that's where we house creative inspiration, a special kind of art. And then we also have 2 online. I saw a lot of my crafting handmade items on Etsy. That's how we started with when we were making the masks, as well as we just launched a print on demand business to sell online on Sean Smith's gallery.
Okay, great. So you've mentioned before, you talk about the importance of creativity and expression and fostering inclusive communities. Tell us more about that whole concept and how you bring that to bear.
So my students typically are not going to be able to access academic instruction, reading, writing, math, and science and social studies as their typical peers are. However, they're very creative. And my mom's an artist, and she's always said it, there's no right or wrong way to do art, there's just different techniques and mediums. And art is subjective, and it's subject to, what you think is art, I may view as that's not particularly my taste. But I have, through the creativity, I've always brought arts into my classroom and allow the students to do their own thing. Several years ago, we actually used to do once a year, we would have art in April, and my student would create pieces, and then we would auction those off, and that money's helped to pay for our outings and et cetera into the community, whether we're going to the movies or we're going to a recreational leisure activity, et cetera. And it's pretty, I'm not going to lie, I need to get a box of tissue out. When the students are being quite creative, it's just really emotionally powerful to watch them, because they can create some things, and I'm like, I could spend hours trying to recreate that and I would never be able to do it. I'm not an artist by any means. I am very creative and crafty. I'm more the give me a pattern and some instructions and I can put something together, whether it's sewing or et cetera, doing say heat transfers on a shirt, et cetera. So I have found that I'm able to get a lot more out of the students when I put art into the classroom. However, I do make it academic. For an example, when we're working on a piece, we talk about measurements, we talk about numbers, colors, and those kind of things. So I bring the science part of into it as well. And we do some project-based learning, as it's called in typical classrooms. My students don't understand what that terminology is. But for an example, we did a science enrichment activity where we were giving some parameters. It had to be something that was environmentally recyclable, etc. So I asked the students certain questions. I was able to get out of them. They wanted to build a fish tank. So then expanding on that, okay, we're going to make an aquaponics fish tank to use the filtered water to water our plants and make it sustainable. They didn't understand that terminology, but when we actually build something using plastic containers out of the classroom, 2-liter bottles, and I actually had an old fish pump thing, we incorporated that. We used fake plants, of course. They were like so proud of that. It sat in my classroom for months. And anytime they got an opportunity during lunchtime or break, or when the 8th graders came in for ASL, they were so proud of that. We left it on display in front of the whiteboard with all of our little, plans and everything on how we were going to design it. Then it really made me realize that project-based learning, hands-on activities, my students can't look at an image and then generalize that into the community. We have to go into the community. We have to do hands-on activities so that they can actually see what it is. It's different from you and I. If somebody was to give us instructions, you're going to go to the grocery store, here's your shopping list, you're going to buy these, you're going to use your savings card, your coupons, and your debit card, and you're going to purchase groceries. They don't understand what I'm telling them when we're doing that. But when we do a lesson and I simplify it, using assistive technology and et cetera, and videos and visuals and that kind of thing, then we actually go into the community and do it. And then when we come back, I know that they're learning something because I give them that kind of post-quiz, matching pictures, et cetera. They're able to tell me on a piece of paper or in a video or touching things, pictures, and et cetera. So they're able to generalize the skills that they're learning when they have that hands-on activities.
Okay. Sounds challenging.
It is.
But you've been doing it for quite a while now.
And I think the ease for me, I mean, yes, it's challenging. It is a lot of work. I'm not going to lie about that. It is a lot of work. But I think because I was that learner and I was very visual because I couldn't hear, I went through the teen years where I didn't want to wear my hearing aids because I didn't want, other individuals to look at me as different. But as I became an adult, it just became who I am. There's a lot of perks to it as well. Volume control, especially if you have a significant other or spouse that snores. So it is challenging, but it's very rewarding. And I think the rewards outweigh the work that I have to put into it.
So if you were talking to a group of folks that were, or even just an individual that was maybe watching this podcast and thinking, special education, yeah, what advice would you give them?
My advice I would give is just pick one area that you want to work on. So say it is how you differentiate that instruction to meet the needs of the students. And that's where, a lot of people have some negative views on et cetera, say like with assistive technology or utilizing other tools. But again, it's a tool. It's not to replace us as teachers, but it can make our work easier. There's this expression, right? Work smarter, not harder.
Yep.
So by utilizing that, take a few minutes and spread out your week and think about what you want these students to accomplish this week. They may be on a total different timeline than the rest of your students, but think about what is one thing you want them to use and find out what those tools are that can help you to do that, and then you're going to be successful. And to recognize also that even the small gains are something to celebrate.
Yeah. So as we were sitting down, you shared a little bit with me about this other persona that you have. You feel like sharing that with our audience?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, I grew up wearing hearing aids, and I did have one experience which I haven't shared with you. Early on, people don't realize my age, but I was in school in the 70s. And unfortunately, before the last change with the Education Act for Handicapped Children, I was actually kicked out of public school because I was wearing a body aid, which was 2 hearing aid devices and a wire, and then this contraption that was strapped to my body. So I had to go to a school for hearing impaired. And with that came some challenges, but I had a blessing in disguise because I learned how to do sign language. I was the only one that was hard of hearing. Even my teacher was deaf. And there was a small group of only 8 students in the classroom. So when the laws changed and I was able to go back to public school, to the same school that I was actually asked to leave, I got teased because it's quite warm in Southern California. I'd taken a brief detour to Southern California, Buena Park, Anaheim area in the 70s, and it's quite warm down there. So my hair is very thick, so I wore it up, and people were seeing the hearing aids and et cetera, and these wire contraptions, and started, of course, the teasing and the bullying and et cetera. So I, as a kind of, a coping mechanism, started telling jokes, figuring I'd give them something to laugh at versus them laughing at me. And that was my coping mechanism to get through that, because it is hard to go through any kind of experience where you're being targeted, bullied, and harassed. So that led to, fast forward, I had always been the prankster and telling jokes, etc. Student teaching. My first year, my university didn't quite know where to put me. So they said, oh, a neighboring district, they have a deaf and hard of hearing program throughout the whole district. So they put me at an elementary because I was getting my elementary credential and special education endorsement. And I had to do a project involvement plan. Excuse me. A family involvement project.
Okay.
So I was like, what's better than having a carnival, right? And then I realized that a lot of the deaf students that I was working with have never been to a carnival. They've never seen a clown. They just don't do those type of activities. So I was very proud that I put off this deaf carnival in the gymnasium multipurpose room, and I wore the most hideous diamond purple, yellow, orange color clown costume I could find for probably $9.95 at a department store. And I'm proud to say that that carnival is still in existence now, almost 20 years later. And with going from maybe 100 total from the students from all 4 schools, the elementary, the middle, and the high school, they had actually 2 other programs at the high school. And it's thriving to thousands of people engaging with that. So that $9.95 costume turned into, this is a cheap way to go to therapy. So I decided to become a professional clown. So I went to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho to a clown convention, and it's kind of stuck since then. So I have 2 personalities. I have Miss Ladybug the Clown, and then I have Miss Dotty Dot. So one is the full-on costume, what we call a white face clown, and then Miss Dotty Dot, she's just kind of just a casual overalls, everything's polka dotted with very minimal clown makeup. So with that came my fascination for learning magic, balloon twisting, face painting. I'm still working on that, etc. And so at my current middle school, I actually started a magic club and found that students actually really like learning how to do magic. But they do have to swear that they will never share those magic tricks with anybody. So yes, I do have a certificate on my wall that I'm a professional clown, and I also belong to the World Clown Association as well as the American Magicians Association.
Well, that keeps it light.
It does. And it's really, it's kind of a cool little tricks to have in my bag, because I was one of those teachers that when they had a student that had some behavior issues, typical student, but they were really struggling to reach out to this kid. So for some reason, they sent him to my classroom. So I always kind of broke the ice with teaching them a magic trick, because oftentimes students that are kind of borderline, either just having a learning disability or they're just acting out, because we don't know what happens in a child's life after 3:30 to 8:30 the next morning.
Right.
So there's something that they're not comfortable talking about. And sometimes a distraction is learning a magic trick, and then they can use that to get the attention in a positive way, much like how I did. So it's pretty impressive to teach a child, or teenagers in this case, a magic trick, and they're able to wow their peers and their audience and put themselves in a positive light, much like how it did for me when I was a kid.
Wonderful. I think we're at our time.
We are.
It's gone by quickly.
Yes.
So, Lisa Marie, thank you for joining us today. It's been wonderful getting to know you. To all of you out there, thank you for joining us for this latest edition of The Current. Until next time, everyone, take care.
Thank you, everybody.